To call Immortal a legendary and very influential black metal band feels very much like an understatement, so we're not going to say it. It's pretty much assumed at this point. But what has happened with the group over the past, 12 to 18 months is kind of a head scratcher. But nonetheless, we have Abbath with his first true solo album. I say first true considering there was the I album, which took place about 10 years ago and was very good, but that was a super group for one, and for two, it didn't display black metal so much as it displayed some of Abbath's other influences along with the other members of the group. So, what do we get with this? What do we get with this solo disc? First solo endeavor. 48 minutes long, 8 tracks, and it is more in the standard black metal style. That's purely setup. Let's examine Abbath a little bit more. Wait, that really didn't come out right. Well, anyway, let's get that out of our minds. So, when you think about Abbath, you obviously think of Immortal, and whenever you listen to this disc, you obviously see and hear some of the harkening tones of his prior band. It definitely showcases that his style is very unique, and the reason why Immortal had that signature tone to him was due in part one, part by Abbath himself, because this disc does have the construction almost as though some of this material was being worked on or considered, or maybe his contribution to the follow-up to All Shall Fall that came out for Immortal back in 2009. It's hard to really tell. Also, kind of on a side note, seeing Immortal live during a snowstorm was really awesome. That was back in 2011, and I mentioned this because of the incoming winter storm Jonas or Janus or Jalopy. I don't know what the fuck its name is. But yeah, it would be really cool if Immortal was coming this weekend, because I would just go to recreate the experience. But this disc really recreates the experience of listening to just, good old-fashioned black metal, and it has that snarl, it has that feel, it has that destruction on its mind. Whenever To War begins and lashes into its 5.5-minute-long assault, Abbath's voice comes forth and registers that very reminiscent tone that you've heard on so many discs beforehand, and it's kind of a welcome. It's a welcome feeling. It's a welcome sound to hear, considering we have seldom heard new material out of this man's voice for quite some time. It's not something that happens every day anymore, or at least from what it seems. And I like the fact that the black metal tone on this disc does have a very standard, a very, a run-of-the-mill affair to it whenever it comes to the Immortal sound, if you really want to call it that, but still also offers enough aggression and enough thump behind it to really separate itself as a bit individualistic, and that's something that we're going to be talking about a lot whenever it comes to this disc. Winterbane, the very second track, don't confuse it with Winter's Bane, the band that actually featured Ripper Owens before he was in Judas Priest, is a near 7-minute assault that also opens up just the can of worms that you would expect. It's certainly a song that could be seen as an early session highlight or an early side A highlight of this album. The expansiveness of this track is something that only moves to its benefit. In fact, at times, this song can feel like it's 2 tracks that are linked together and bonded by one single riff that seems to act as a bridge, and that bridge focuses the attention and the energy very nicely. You've got to love whenever bands or whenever individual songwriters are willing to do that, take that extra step, give that extra spark, because if you don't pay attention, you'll feel like and think that you've listened to 2 tracks whenever you've only listened to the one. Ashes of the Damned and Ocean of Wounds are able to continue this pathway, but at this point in time, it's starting to get a little bit, knowledgeable. You're starting to understand what's going on, and the direct approach is starting to really take its toll a little bit. I think that these could have benefited from a little bit more oomph. But then whenever you get into Fenrir Hunts, whenever you get down to track 6 and you start to close in on the finale of this album, I think the last 3 tracks are some of the strongest material that this disc has to offer. The latter 3/8 of this disc are really something special. Fenrir Hunts, Root of the Mountain, and Eternal just feel like they have a little bit more of an experimentative approach to them. They have a little bit more of a overall encompassing value to them, where Abbath is sort of taking his collective influence that perhaps you heard a little bit on the I album. He's applying it here, only still throwing and fusing in the black metal, and it's like maybe he listened to a little bit of Enslaved or something like that, because there are just some tones and some patterns in here that compare to that band very, very nicely, and for them to be in the same scene, it would seem almost obvious that something like that would be true. But it's just the first thing that really comes to mind whenever you hear these tones, whenever you hear the structure. The structure certainly has a lot of the haunting elements, although it's handled in a much different way. I don't think you're going to see Abbath lash out with any sort of 9 to 10 minute long epic anytime soon, though if it does, it probably would be quite interesting. Overall, this album has a lot to offer to a listener. It's certainly one that's not going to blow you away or necessarily be seen as the black metal album that's going to revive and save traditional, old school, first wave or second wave black metal. I'm not going to go that far. Hell no. This is a modern album in the modern world of 2016, and black metal is certainly not going to be, unforgiving toward Abbath releasing this self-titled disc. Instead, it's going to be an enamoring point for a lot of individuals, for a lot of fans. There's going to be many that feel that this disc has a strong backbone behind it and delivers, where some other albums by some other groups that are still trying to hang on to the past would probably fall a little short. I think this disc is competent, but I also think that it's merely slightly above average. It's one that's an enjoyable listen that you can easily find yourself getting trapped or lost into, but it's one that lasting value does not necessarily showcase itself immediately. It's instead one where you have to challenge yourself with a second or third listen in order for it to really deliver that quality and that charm that really drive you to revisit albums such as this in the future. I would give this album an 81 out of 100. Strong effort, certainly what we kind of need to start off 2016 in the black metal department. I think it's a strong first foot in the foothold. I'm sure there have been other releases that have been dropped that no doubt people will talk about and say, well, this is more memorable, but as far as, ones that are on the surface that people know extremely well, I think this is a good start. I think it gives a lot of other bands a position or a reason to go out and make something that's even more blasphemous, more dark, and just kick ass. I don't know what you guys think about this, the self-titled album from Abbath. Examine Abbath. Turn that into a meme, you fucks. Let me know in the comments below. I'm coverkillernation, and we are just getting started with the swarm of new metal releases. And I don't mean, Limp Bizkit and Disturbed. The swath of new albums from metal bands that are coming this week. So stay tuned, where we'll talk about albums from Steven Wilson, from Megadeth, from Borknagar, from Oliver, maybe from Drowning Pool. We'll see. See you later.